Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is, what if Naruto was forsaken by his mother but adored by a goddess, Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Broken, his world shattered before his very eyes by the person he trusted the most. A cruel reality laid before him on the date of his birth. A day of happiness, of joy, turned into a bloodbath by the figure that stood in the middle of it all. A cruel smile on her lips as she examined the blonde boy crying on his knees. His tears having no visible effect on the woman. His friends' shocked faces, dismembered limbs, and chunks of flesh were scattered around. Blood everywhere as his tears intermingled with the pool he lay kneeled in. In the midst of all the carnage, of all the horror, was an untouched birthday cake, 6 candles perfectly lit as not a touch of crimson was spotted upon the frosting. Unlike the rest that was soaking the tablecloths. The woman was like beauty given physical form. Crimson red hair flowed like ethereal strands of silk down her back and ended just short of her ankles. Amethyst eyes of the purest shade gleamed in the light of the terror around her. Perfectly flawless skin just a touch pale glistened in the candlelight. The only imperfection to the picture of beauty was the blood-stained kimono, and the euphoric smile that marred the woman's face. Why indeed? It was like a mantra, a repeated phrase as the boy still tried to comprehend the scene before him. Why were all his friends mutilated in such gruesome ways? Why was his mother standing there, her clothing bloodstained as she simply smiled at him like she had been for the past 20 minutes? And why was she standing on the torso of his father? Why could he see his beloved father's legs just behind the table? Why were his eyes missing from their sockets? Why was she looking at him, her son, with all the love she could convey as she stood in a puddle of her husband's blood? Why would you do this? She laughed. It was the laugh he had always heard from her when he always tried to prank her, or steal from the cookie jar, or anything she found amusing. It was the laugh that he had associated with the kindest person in the world, the one person he could always trust, the person that he always went to when he was being bullied, and the person that would sing him to sleep when he cried in her arms. So what did she find so funny in all of the unholiness around her? Chains. Golden chains erupted from the ground and wrapped around his kneeling form. He put up no resistance when they tightened around him and kept him in that same kneeling position. She fixed him a look full of love and caring as he calmly took a step forward, and began to walk from one puddle of blood to the another puddle. The only difference being that she was, at the same time, stepping into a puddle of children's tears. The woman knelt in front of her crying child, her son, and gave the boy a smile, before she thrusted her hand through the boy's stomach. The boy cried out in pain as his mother grabbed something inside of him, and twisted her hand. A howl of agony escaped the boy's lips as his mother pulled back her hand, a golden orb of power was pulsating in her grasp. The golden chain slackened, and released the boy so that he may collapse and lay in the puddle of blood and tears around him. A gaping hole was in the place of his stomach as blood flowed out of it like a river, joining the rest of the sanguine liquid that was scattered everywhere on the stone floor. The boy's haunted and pain-filled eyes still leaked tears as his mother held the glowing orb in her blood-covered hand. A loving smile was still in place as her jewel-like eyes gazed into her child's sapphire-like ones. She walked over and knelt right next to her dying child, who gasped up a glob of blood that escaped his lips. "I always wanted a daughter, and then you were born. Can't say it wasn't worth it, you were always so adorable. I think I actually started to love you a little bit starting, about 6 months ago." Her words were cruel as she moved her son's head onto her lap. not caring for any of the blood staining the area around her as she ignored her child's last breaths. It truly is a shame that Minato was fool enough to seal a demon into your gut. Protecting his village. I believe he called it. We'll protect him from the villagers, he told me. It really doesn't matter in the end. I mean, what kind of father seals a demon into a child's body, much less his own infant that was just born? I did tell him that I would pluck his eyes out for that, and an Uzumaki always keeps their word. Her son's body was now starting to feel cold. Her eyes narrowed in anger at that simple fact, and then softened when she realized that the boy she was cradling was just that. A child. So she sent a pulse of her power into her weakling of a son to keep him alive just a tad bit longer. The mother smiled as she stroked the boy's blood-stained hair. The crimson liquid had now turned black due to exposure. If your fool of a father hadn't made his most idiotic decision that fateful day, and let me seal the demon into myself, you would have lived. And we would be spending happy days in a royal palace as I ascended to godhood like I am doing right now, and you would have many more sisters instead of the twins you will never get to see. A choked sound came from the boy's throat as he tried to speak. Kushina smiled as she sent another pulse of her power into her dying child. She leaned forward and bent her back just a smidgen and sent a simple breath into her child's ear. Tell me your last words, Naruto, so that I may look back fondly at all the memories of my first child. She whispered into the boy's ear and then tilted her head so that her ear was next to the boy's mouth. She listened intently as her child managed to bring out the last words she would hear from the child. I love you, Mom. The boy croaked out, before he went limp in her arms. A frown marred the woman's bloody face as she processed that she just heard. A sigh escaped her lips as she stood up, the body of her child sliding off her legs. She walked 3 steps away from the still breathing, but pitiful child behind her. She didn't turn around to look at the boy as a dark power seeped out of the red-headed woman's body and gathered near her hand. A hard look was directed the woman's hand as she glared at the open door before her. You always were a mama's boy, but I guess that's part of what makes you so adorable. She hissed into the air as she whipped herself around, and slung the concentrated glob of dark power towards her almost dead child that laid on the bloody floor. The insidious power screeched through the air and collided with the downed boy, enveloping everything in the room with a blinding tainted light. When it stopped gleaming, it revealed a stone statue in place of the boy, carved into his likeness. A smile graced the mother as she exited the building, a third eye found itself being formed in the middle of her forehead as she walked through the halls of her quiet home, leaving behind the dead bodies of her deceased husband, and the friends of her first child. If you can survive and escape the Voidlands, then you can call yourself my child. And I will shower you with my love, that is if your future siblings don't kill you first. She chuckled as the third eye opened, revealing a red eye with multiple rings and 9 tomo. In the next second, an entire village blinked out of existence. And then a continent was vaporized in the next. And then the entire world was rewritten. Ost. End. A sigh escaped the mouth of a red-headed 17-year-old with a set of headphones blasting music into his ears. He calmly walked the waterways, avoiding people without even opening his eyes as his feet walked the well-traveled cobblestone road. He wore a simple dark blue coat. It appeared to be a simple palette swap of the coats in the Matrix, a pair of sunglasses that blocked the world from seeing his eyes. His leather boots sloshed through a puddle of cold water as he flexed his fingerless gloved hands. With the gloves themselves having a symbol of a circle surrounded by a ring of flames, a sun symbol. It was night. The stars were out on this chilly winter afternoon as the 17-year-old's breath became visible when it came into contact with the night air. The city lights lit up the walkways and showed the world the black color of the riverway. It appeared as if the water was just simply liquid darkness as it continued underneath a tunnel beneath a bridge. The young adult pulled a pin out of his pocket. It was a strange pin, black with white skull-like design. The almost man tossed it into the air, pulling in a deep breath as the pin flipped in the air. Open up your senses. And landed back into his open palm. And then his mind's eye opened, and he could hear everything. The man stood there for not but a few seconds, before he suddenly took off into another direction, heading into a seedy alleyway that needed to be cleaned up. He walked through the alleyway and took a left at the fork in the road, and came upon a sight of a group of 3 men accosting a single woman. Already knowing what they would say if he interrupted them and asked what they were doing, the man simply walked behind one of the men, and clobbered him in the back of the head. The indignant cry of pain drew the attention of all that were present. One of the 3 men sneered at the intruder as he conjured up a fireball to float above his open hand. "Do you wanna get hurt, kid?" he demanded angrily as he glared right at the 17-year-old who hit his buddy in the back of the head. The same fella who still had yet to get back up. The boy was quiet for 3 seconds before he spoke up. The better question would be. He opened his eyes. And then his left eye glowed a ghostly blue and a wispy trail of that same color floated up from his eye. "Do you wanna have a bad time?" Cliffs as high as the eye can see, with trees growing out of the rock and tilting upwards to better capture sunlight. That all he saw when he looked left and right. Eyes returning to the dirt road before him, he idly noted that there was a cave in front of him a good distance away. The man was of the height that belonged to the average 17-year-old. He wore an open long coat that was black and had red flame patterns at the bottom. His blue pants were held up by a black leather belt that had a sun symbol belt buckle. A red shirt with a red heart emblem was the only other thing that he wore on his torso. His long, spiky blonde hair was tied into a ponytail that trailed down his back and ended just below the middle of his spine. Resting on his neck was a set of headphones that were blasting a song called, "Give Me All Your Love." The man pulled his silver fingerless gloved hand, and cracked his knuckles. Craning his neck as well as he looked at the large opening of the cave in the distance. "Well, looks like that flower was right about this place. A monster nest, or at the very least the home of that big that's been rampaging around." As if to answer the man's statement, a large giant of a monster walked out of the cave and gave the air a good sniff. The monster itself was large, bipedal with 2 horns sprouting from its head, and a nozzle for a mouth. Black hair covered every bit of the towering hunk of power. With powerful muscles and 4-finger clawed hands, it stretched out and gave a great big yawn. "Oh look, it just woke up from nap time. Will daddy have to smack a bitch back to sleep, he wonders?" Came the sarcastic voice of the man, whose sapphire blue eyes glared at the beast in question. The monster then farted, and scratched its butt. "Oh great, it's retarded too. Gee, what else is new concerning my job? Idiots day in and day out," the man muttered. Although it would seem that the beast's hypersensitive ears that looked like a donkey's picked up the sound of the jackass's voice. It turned to look at the man in the distance, and its eyes turned red. Not crimson demon-slitted red, but its entire eye turned red and glowed that same color with rage. "Ah, me and my big mouth," the man cursed as he settled into a fighting position. His fists in front of his face as he tensed his legs and bent them slightly. The beast then bared its chest, slammed its meaty fists against, and roared. And when it roars, everything in the vicinity knows that it should get the out and dodge. Trees were uprooted, bushes shredded into the wind, rocks were thrown back, and the ground underneath the monster cracked from the sheer force of the mighty yell. The man grit his teeth and held up his arm in front of his face as he was blown back slowly by the powerful winds generated from the monster's roar. When the mighty yell ceased, the monster was on all fours. Steam was blowing out of the giant beast's nostrils. The monster then opened up its terrifying maw, and a light began to radiate from the back of its throat. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me," the man muttered as he crossed his arms in front of his body, calling upon his magic in preparation. With a resounding boom, a powerful white laser speeded out of the monster's mouth and zoomed onwards towards the man's location. When the powerful expulsion of magic came into contact with the man, it split itself upon him, and blasted off into different directions, created nondescript carvings into the surrounding cliffside. Standing on one of those selfsame surrounding cliffs was a busty red-headed woman in a chainmail bikini armor. The only other pieces of armor she possessed were large sabatons with armoring that came up to her knee, think the light suit in Metroid Prime Echoes, and gauntlets that crawled up to her elbows. The woman's hair was of medium length, and spiked in multiple directions. The woman eyed the blast of light as it approached the man, with the man doing something to protect himself from that very same blast of pure energy. A man, let us see just what this man's fate is. Will he die to this beast, as nothing but a blot of blood upon the pure earth? Or will he prevail against this beast that gave me, a war goddess, a simple nick upon my undamaged skin? With eyes that looked exactly like that of an eagle, the woman stared at the battle down below her. When the monstrous beast stopped its unrelenting wave of energy, it stood back on its legs. A grin on its face as it viewed the gouged-out earth that stood in the path of its assault. It was about to begin hunting game in the area, when the smoke cleared, and revealed a sight that would make the beast charge like a bull. Floating just slightly above the ground, with his arms crossed in front of his face, the man had not a scratch upon his figure as he was protected by a flaming aura of protection. When the man released his technique, the crackle pop barrier, his feet met the ground and his gaze settled onto the rushing beast. The man simply put one hand in his feet, shifted his body so that his right side was facing the charging bull, which still had a lot of distance to cover, and raised a hand that glowed white towards the rushing beast. Superfine beam. The man shouted, and like magic, a continuous stream of gray bursts of energy rushed from his hand outwards towards the speeding monster. Although it really didn't seem to do anything as the arrows of energy just impacted with the beast's strong hide, and faded away from existence after that. The man's hand that was in his pocket retreated from the warm confines of the pocket, and he did a swiping motion with his index finger, all the while keeping up the superfine beam's onslaught. Suddenly, barbed wire erupted from nowhere and put itself in front of the path of the charging monster. However, the monster just barreled on through the love me tether. The monster had now reached the halfway marker, and had already barreled through 6 more of the love me tethers that the man had created by doing 6 more swipes with his index finger. The man's efforts were only making the bull expel more effort into charging towards him. A smirk graced his features as he realized that he was essentially annoying the bull-like monster. Focusing his eyes onto the charging monster, the man cast yet another spell as he continued to make swiping motions with his index finger, as well as keeping up the stream of shots from the superfine beam. A stream of light seemed to shine down from the heavens and become spotlight for the monster. This in reality was just another spell that the man had begun to use. The eyes full of hope was but a simple spell that slowly shaved off the vitality of those that fell under its gaze. The 3 spells were more than enough to slow down the great hulking beast, but no enough to stop it. Onwards and onwards, the beast kept up its charge, like a berserker that only knew how to destroy what was in front of it, it kept going. It went on, until it was in front of the mage, who had stopped his onslaught now that the beast was in front of him. With a great roar, the beast stood on its hind legs, interlocked its meaty hands, and slammed them down to the smirking mage before it. To put it simply, the beast was the size of a 4-story house, and its mighty arms reached down to its hooved knees. The man simply put the hand he used to cast the love me tethers back into his pocket, and gathered magic around his hand that had kept up the stream of superfine beams. A lance-like construct of energy materialized around the man's hand, and he suddenly speeded forward, in between the monster's legs and cutting past the beast's ankles, with a cry of, "Go to hell." It was a simple spell that propelled someone forward at high speeds. And it was fast enough to avoid the hulking monster's meaty sledgehammer of an attack, which created a crater from the sheer force behind the attack. The man was behind the monster with a smirk on his face as he noticed that the spot he sped past had actually bled. He had managed to cut through the monster's incredibly tough hide, and that pleased the man if only for the simple fact that he managed to make his opponent bleed first blood. Ha! First round goes to me, ya giant, ha! Thwack! It was so sudden, he could barely track the movement of the monster's arm. It was just so fast. And by the time he had realized that it had made a move against him, it was already too late to move out of the way. The beast had turned around with great haste, and slammed its arm in an ascending motion, and sent the man flying into the air. It was fast, and it was hard. Too late the man realized. He wasn't fighting a mighty glacier, but a lightning bruiser. The man was high above in the air. He realized his situation in 1 second, and with great pain racking his body, he turned his gaze towards the monster on the ground. The next second, it was just there. Right in front of him. In the air. With both of its hands intertwined together, as if using them like a sledgehammer. The next thing the man knew was the pain that came from the pure brute strength of the monster as it slammed its hands onto the prone form of the mage, sending him towards the ground at terminal velocity. When the dust settled, there was a large crater in place of a spot where a boulder taller than the monster used to be. At the very epicenter of the crater was a severely damaged mage with blood leaking from his mouth. The blurry images ceased to be, and he saw a sight that absolutely terrified him. Descending towards him was his monster opponent, a fist back. The beast was using the gravity of his fall to strengthen his own punch. And it was falling towards him. And it was getting closer and closer, until finally, the fist of the monster met ground zero, and the brute force of the blow itself was so great, it generated an explosion that was 2 times the size of the crater itself. The result was a crater the size of 1/6 of the valley. And there was no blonde mage in sight. However, while the beast had brute strength in spades, it was also a hunter. It was a smart one too. And a hunter used more than instinct and strength to survive. It wanted to be sure that it had completely destroyed the mage that it was battling. And so, the best began to sniff the air. And it was confirmed that the man was indeed still alive. The beast turned itself around, and glared at the man, who was simply leaning against a tree, drinking from a can of soda. Man, gotta love Top Gear and Konohana Sakuya. In case you're wondering, the former lets me teleport, and the other lets me heal myself. The man explained with a smirk. A growl from the monster was the only confirmation that the beast had heard him despite the distance. The man threw the drink away, and it vanished into golden particles. The mage locked eyes with the beast as he continued to walk forward. You know, you're pretty damn strong. A lot stronger than I gave you credit for. So, I'm going to call you Rojang, because a tough like yourself deserves a name that sounds badass. The name's Naruto Uzumaki, and I'm going to give you the fight of your life. A roar from the beast was all the confirmation that Naruto needed that his challenge was accepted. And with a roar, Rojang and Naruto charged at each other, one with pure brute strength, the other with a spell made for bashing into others, the velocity attack. Ost. End. In Fiore's capital of Crocus, a veritable center of culture and entertainment, a city of magic and wonder that has stood against the test of time again and again, there exists one particular shop. A shop of wonder, a shop whose patrons always leave with knowledge upon their shoulders. A shop where they know they will always be welcomed, be accepted. It was a haven for the lost and confused, a place to set them on the right path. It was a coffee shop. And it had some damn good coffee. The shop's owner was a rather interesting man. He was a red-haired man with hair that spiked upwards at the beginning, with said spikes going in different directions, but after it went past his neck they became smooth, much like strands of silk, and ended just above his tailbone. He wore a simple dark blue trench coat, much like those seen in the Matrix movie, shades that protected his eyes from the sunlight of the world, black leather boots, a black vest on top of black dress shirt, black leather pants, and a ring designed like a snake eating its own tail on the index finger of his right hand. And to finish off the picture, he had a set of headphones around his neck. This was Mr. Uzu, a man that was well liked by everyone in the capital. For his likable personality and of how he helps any person he can, especially those with problems against other people. Simply talking to him made some people's problems vanish like that. The infamous case of the quarreling couple is still remembered to this day. Outside of the simple coffee shop was an outside patio on the cobblestone streets. It was simply a few square tables and comfy chairs outside the door really. The inside was simply a counter near the front door, in a circular area with a marble flooring, with the menu behind the counter attached to the ceiling. To the side of the counter was a display of different bakery goods, such as a cake, or a strudel. To the left of the counter was a large area with cushioned chairs and couches, coffee tables, and regular tables. That area did not have a marble flooring, but was covered with a rug. At the moment, however, the coffee shop was empty. Save for Mr. Uzu himself leaning against the counter with the newspaper in hand, the window to his right a good few feet away shining light down onto a plain flower. Tragedy. The death of Titania Urza was the headline of the newspaper. Mr. Uzu gave a sigh as he folded the paper and threw it into the trash bin behind the counter. He turned around and began to make himself his own cup of joe. He was the shop owner, he could do stuff like that. Won't exactly be a death if she manages to win the current ongoing game, but who woulda thunked it that her partner would be the guy partly responsible for this tragedy? He mused as he took a sip. He blanched at the taste. Needs more sugar, he said with a scowl on his face. He grabbed the cup and took 2 steps towards a different machine, held the cup beneath the dispenser, and pulled the lever. When that was down, he let up on the pressure and took a sip of his caffeine drink. A smile graced his lips as he heard a tinkling that signified that a customer had just opened the door and walked in. He was used to the players vising his little place, well, the ones who were still alive, that is. Looking over his shoulder just a smidgen, he saw the telltale signs of scarlet hair. It would seem Urza and her partner had decided to visit her humble place in between missions again. Scarlet, if it's about the donuts, I'm not adding any more sugar or sweetener to the coffee I give you. That said, I thought that you were in a rush to hunt down some target blue noise. He chuckled as he turned around to face his customer, and a smile raced his lips when he saw the butterfly hairpin just above her ear. Aiko was an interesting girl, he mused. She was a schoolgirl who was very much into fashion. She weaved her own clothing and sold her designs, allowing her to rack in the big bucks. Although she always put her more interesting and artistic designs through him. The long red hair that was in a braid and traveled to just her tailbone, much like his own hair. She constantly pestered him for a job at his coffee shop through unorthodox means. But he would have to turn away. He already had 6 other employees that pretty much lived with him on the 2nd floor. I'm not turning this into a maid cafe. 36 is a coffee shop for people to relax and hang out. Not a place that caters to a specific fetish. He deadpanned with a smirk as he took another sip of the bittersweet drink. And now she had such an adorable little pout on her face. Did the French maid outfit help her out in that regard? He wondered. He knew she was a girl that was used to having her way. Why else would she constantly pester him for a job other than the sheer principle of getting what she wanted? He knew she wasn't in it for the job. She didn't seem to be the kind of girl that was interested in the whole coffee shop girl thing. She simply turned away and cupped her face with both of her hands, making herself be all cute like. Oh, he keeps turning me away. Why is this so? Could it be that he doesn't like adorable, innocent, helpless girls like me? A smirk graced Mr. Uzu's face as he put a hand beneath the counter, grasped a black pin with a skull-like design on it, and slapped Aiko's while she was turned away. She jumped into the air with an eep and glared at Mr. Uzu with anger, scorn, and embarrassment. If you weren't such a handsome man, and that mother is curious about you, then I would have burned you to ashes and wiped those same ashes from all of existence with my god magic. Mr. Uzu almost raised a questioning eyebrow at her. He had experience with using the player pin to read people's minds. He always found Aiko to be a mystery. A young girl with the most powerful mental fortitude he had ever seen trying to seduce her way into his coffee shop. Who wouldn't be curious? And now he had some insight into how the girls' minds worked. But what the hell is god magic? He knew of Godslayer magic, but God. Curiosity ruled him for but a sentence worth. So what do you think of God's Aiko? He said while turning around leaning against the counter, his back towards the schoolgirl behind him as he took a sip of his coffee, idly noting that he would have to refill it soon. The girl rubbed her bum for but a few seconds, that same angry look still on her face. When she registered the question he had asked, her face turned into that of a leer, a predatory leer to be exact. Does the handsome and respected coffee shop owner want to worship me like the goddess I am? Oh, how adorable. Maybe I will spare you and keep you as a servant when you fall to my charms. Mr. Uzu blinked for 1 second. You're a legitimate goddess, aren't you? He deadpanned with a sip of his coffee. He heard a sound akin to someone falling to the ground in shock. Or something along those lines. He heard a loud thud, that was for sure. He whipped around to come face to face with an Aiko that had her nose touching his own. Her normally violet eyes, so much similar to that of his own mother, were replaced with glowing, intricate magic circles. Chill girl, I'm not going to go around spilling the secret. He said with the most amount of interest in his voice as possible. Oh, and what proof do you have that you won't just go around and tell as many people as you possibly can? What's to stop me from just disintegrating you right here and now? She seethed out. Her eyes began to glow dangerously. It would seem that the only reason she hadn't killed him by now was that she had some form of attachment to him. Then he did something she didn't expect. He poked her forehead, and pushed her back, making her land on her as she stared up at him on shock. Only one other person has done that to me. Mr. Uzu, who was still holding onto the player pin, raised an eyebrow that time. It would seem her mental defenses went down when she was either shocked, caught off guard, or surprised. With a shrug he began to refill his coffee, not saying anything to the goddess in a maid outfit. When his cup was refilled he turned back around, took a sip, and looked the girl in the eye. Women are troublesome. The goddess's eye twitched once, twice, and thrice before she stood back up, and snapped her fingers. Mr. Uzu sensed a surge of magic around the girl before she was enveloped in a blinding light. Luckily his trusty shades protected him. Meh. Feels like a seal just got broken. When the light died down, in place of the girl in a maid outfit was a grown woman. Her crimson-red hair was gathered into 2 buns on the side of her head, and pushed through as pigtails that reached her thighs. The back of her head had a pigtail that reached down, and acted like an obi, the ribbon thing, I think, of the crimson kimono that ended at her knees with black flame patterns at the edges. Her face was an ageless one, 1 second it looked 20, the next 50. But that did not detract from the beauty of it all. The massive double D that the kimono offered the cleavage of was a nice bonus as well. Her legs had some strange, wire and silk-like stockings on them. For some reason, however, she was barefoot. Her hands were held in front of her, interlocked together as she stared at Mr. Uzu. I give it an 8. Another thud sound was heard as Mr. Uzu took another sip of his coffee. Ah, that's the good stuff. He murmured aloud. You dare to give me, the goddess of fire and rage, an 8. Why is it not a 10? Am I not worthy of such a high rating? She screeched out to Mr. Uzu, shaking her fists in rage, pure and primal. A feminine rage that comes from someone insulting her beauty. I gave you a 9 when you were in the outfit. Nice, petite, and adorable. Not voluptuous and boingy. He stoically responded while chewing on a donut. Aiko glared at Mr. Uzu before she thought about what that statement implied. She gasped and pointed a dramatic, accusing finger at him. You're a lolicon, she yelled out to the world. And daamn proud of it. He responded cheekily, all the while with a smile on his face. Damn it. That's my younger sister's territory. I can't do anything to you now. She raged as the coffee shop owner's decaf dispenser exploded behind him. With a wave of the male redhead's hand, the dispenser repaired itself. Although the raging beauty before him didn't seem to notice his use of magic to fix it. She then whipped around and glared at the man behind the counter. He raised an eyebrow at her. Are you finally going to order something? He questioned as he finished off his donut. With a resigned sigh, she gave him her answer. Regular, black, with a little bit of sweetener in it. She replied. Ost. Twey, noisy noise. The landscape of the valley was now 1/2 destroyed. Craters littered the area, tree bark and tree bits were everywhere, and the two combatants, Rojang the monster, and Naruto the mage, were still going at it. Naruto jumped from his spot on Rojang's arm just in time to avoid the monster trying to swat him off. Flipping through the air, the mage gathered magic into his hand, and compacted it until it was set to blow. One stroke, vast wealth. He yelled out from his spot in the air, and a powerful burst of orange and brown energy left his hand, and exploded against Rojang's back, making the powerful beast groan in pain. Naruto landed back onto the ground, feet first, but Rojang was quicker. Getting back a second wind, Rojang roared, beat its chest, and gathered energy in its mouth. Seeing the attack coming, Naruto summoned forth his crackle pop barrier and readied himself for the impact. Although the attack that came from the monster was not one that he had expected. Instead of a mighty laser, it was a surge, a stream of yellow lightning erupted from its mouth, and speeded towards Naruto quicker than a flash. Piercing the crackle pop barrier and throwing the mage backwards. Groaning as he stood up, the man berated himself. Should I use the Carson instead of my weakest defensive move, but that would have meant that I would have to activate my eye. He grimaced. And then he saw the bull-like monster charging towards him, again. The mage decided that he wouldn't use the same strategy as before, and opted to instead use a different spell to stop, or at the very least slow down his opponent. Instead he pointed out his hand, and focused his magic into the air around Rojang, and cast the spell he wanted to use. Long live the rock! He shouted as the monster rushed towards him. It took 3 seconds, but it worked. Where once stood a monstrous behemoth, was now that very same monster, encased in stone, immobile. Although it would seem that its sudden petrification would not hold, as the stone monster was wriggling back and forth. Capitalizing on his enemy's state of incarceration, Naruto used the spell Top Gear to teleport in front of the hulking beast, and began an onslaught of attacks. His arms blurred from the pure speed of his strikes as he swiped again and again at the beast's chest. His hands themselves becoming like blades due to the power of the spell Kanasada. But he did not stop there. The moment he finished his razor-sharp swipe at the tough hide of Rojang, he began gathering magic into his palms. Lance-like protrusions made from pure magic erupted from his hands, and he began a stellar flurry attack against that same spot he had used Kanasada on. He slammed his palm against the bleeding and cut chest of Rojang once, and then twice. And then 6 times, and then 24 times. This was the spell technique known simply as Unjo. A spell that gave one a powerful burst of speed, that in turn, allowed one to inflict multiple amounts of damage to a target with powerful thrusts. The resulting Kanasada Unjo combo was powerful enough to cause the great beast to flinch, break from its prison, and send in backwards by 2 steps. The Rojang stood still to catch its breath as it tried to battle through the pain that was coursing through its chest. It put one hand on the spot with the most pain, and pulled it back to reveal blood on its hand. Its own blood. It was not the shock that it was bleeding, it was the mere quantity of the blood on its hand. It was absolutely drenched. The beast did only one action. It grinned, and looked up to see its adversary lunging at it with a yellow blade in hand. The spell Cool Line was what gave the mage its sword. Out of my face! Naruto yelled out as his blade descended on Rojang's uncovered chest that was bleeding. It was a straight cut through it, not diagonal or of any other direction. The beast cried out in pain, but it fought through it, and slammed its meaty hand into Naruto's chest, cracking bones and breaking a rib as he was sent flying. As the 2 opponents stood up, they glared at each other. And then an understanding passed between them. And then they grinned. And thus, the battle was started anew. Ost. END. Ost. TWEWY. Game over. Dashing through the streets on his skateboard, a figure the age of 17 wearing a gray jacket that had white fur at the cuffs, bottom, and hood leapt in joy as he spinned through the air on his board. He was wearing white shorts and gray shoes while a golden cube rested against his chest, tied around to his neck by a gold chain. The most remarkable thing about him was his long nails, like claws, the slitted pupil of his brown eyes, the red fang-like marks on his cheeks, and the fangs in his mouth. There was little to no doubt that he was a feral and wild person. Yahoo Mosakras! Out of the way! Makin' a delivery! He yelled out to all the people that were in the street. And it would seem that they had already been in motion the moment they heard his voice, rather than his words. However, it would seem that 2 people in particular didn't know the law of the city of Crocus. A particular law that says, when Kiba Inuzuka is telling people to get out and dodge, you get the out and dodge. Both women oddly had the very same red fang-like markings on their cheeks that Kiba did, but made no move to get out of the way. So, the skateboarder that was clutching a white package in his hand simply jumped over them. Grabbing his skateboard with his free hand, and using a small application of magic, the Inuzuka soared above the 2 of them, not even bothering to see just who was new in town to not know the law of the street. But while he didn't see them, they did. And both of their eyes widened in shock. Both said nothing as they watched the wild boy speed down the street and turn a corner at 120 degrees, all the while going at 60 miles per hour. The woman who looked to be in her 20s blinked owlishly as she continued to stare at the street the boy turned at. Mom, was that really? She asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. The older woman, and by far the most feral-looking one to ever exist, simply shook her head. It wasn't him, pup, while at the same time it was pretty damn confusing if you ask me. The younger of the 2, and the now named daughter of the feral-looking woman, looked to her companion. But he looked so much like him, so why did he smell like cats? She asked. The older one shook her head again. Like I said, It's him. But at the same time, it ain't him. I think it might be a good idea to hang out here for a while, and see if this one is as idiotic as ours was. And like that, the two women blended back into the crowd, away from prying eyes. Meanwhile, in another spot in Crocus, specifically in a quaint little poetry bar. Well, it was really a place for people to go up on stage before a cafe crowd and sing something. It was a place that was located at the northeast end of Crocus, more specifically, across from a shop that catered to gothic Lolita clothing. The group on stage went by the name 777. A group that had only recently made an appearance. It was a three-man group of 18-year-olds, led by a guy named Uchiha Sasuke, aka Player Extraordinaire. He was the singer. Dressed in an open black dress shirt and a dark blue t-shirt beneath, dark blue pants, black shoes, and wearing a silver skull necklace, he was immensely popular with the ladies, despite his track record of broken hearts. The second member was a guy by the name of Shikamaru Nara. An incredibly lazy, but smart shadow mage. He was the one on guitar, bass. It was hard to tell considering it was a magic instrument that changed its sound according to the user's wishes. Kinda took out all the skill involved with playing an instrument, maybe that's why he played it. There really wasn't much to the guy. Black eyes and hair tied into a ponytail style. An open green jacket on top of a black t-shirt, and black pants that ended at his ankles, and sandals to top off his lazy, casual look. The final member of the trio was the drummer, a man by the name of Neji Hyuga. A stoic male, but also a massive pervert. Which is odd considering that he is reportedly blind and wears a bandage over his eyes. His long, silk-like black hair was tied into a braid, showing off his blank forehead. He wore a more conservative outfit than the other two members of 777. He wore a simple white kimono over a white shirt. On the back of the kimono was a 777, the 777 logo. Gray pants covered his legs, and white shoes finished off the outfit. Tell me who you are, and who you were. How much have you been paid? Take it easy. Relax. Would you like something to drink? To tell the truth, in this contract I don't care about anything except me, just want the cash transferred to my account. Because it will make me feel alright. Of course, while a lot of the people gathered to listen to the music played by the band, a great many of the females had gathered simply to ogle the two pretty boys of the band, Neji and Sasuke. None more than two people in the very back of the available booths had only arrived so that they may simply look at the singer and drummer. He's got an opinion and posted a suggestion but never reveals his name. Read by someone, taken as a good one but no one knew who wrote it. Few lines of the sentences lie. Anonymity is annoying me all the time. It's like 2 channel, where people can just throw their own anger and forget about those foul actions. Those two women were very similar in appearance. Both wore simple dresses, one was black and the other a very dark blue. Both women had very strange eyes, however. The black-haired and blue-dressed woman had red eyes with a black six-pointed star design in them, while the blue-haired and black-dressed woman had strange crystalline eyes with a floral pattern outside of them, with but a hint of lavender coloring. Both of them had matching hairstyles, long and down the back. And for some odd reason, both had wine glasses filled with a couple-century-old wine, while everyone else had coffee, juice, soda, or wine. It was a no-alcohol place. And yet, no one was giving the two of them any flack. You're driving an expensive car, expectance, supremacy. You're out of control, the troll is waiting down below. You still lack in experience. Too bad, too close, too late to notice where you are. There's no other way to take. Dependency to the tendency, occasionally you misunderstood. Living the life of mediocrity. Hypocrisy, legitimacy. Go over it or game over now. Is this a suitable place to strive? Say, down, to it or drown by it. It's your turn to throw the dice. Hamura, I think we've seen enough. We should go now, spoke the star-eyed woman to her companion. The woman simply nodded her head, and as if they never even existed, the two women vanished. No one saw Neji grimace the moment the two women seemingly disappear. No one but the ever-vigilant Shikamaru. Ost. End. Aiko huffed as she exited the coffee shop known as 36 Feet, now back in her cover form, the schoolgirl that was very into fashion. She still had the coffee that she ordered though. It was only half full. It was only by the grace of her own magic-enhanced body heat that it wasn't cold yet. She idly noted the strange skull and cross graffiti decal outside on one of 36's window as she went back into the crowd. Passing by the duo from the earlier concert without so much as nod in their direction due to the thoughts bouncing in her skull. And then she stopped, realized who she passed, and had only one thought go through her head. Was that Auntie Mama Makoto and Mama Hamura? How? I am really out if I didn't notice I passed by them. Oh crap, they're going into 36. But I'm pretty sure that Mr. Uzu won't do anything stupid now that he knows all about my family, I hope. Heya. Welcome to 36, whatcha want? Mr. Uzu said with small wave and a nice guy smile on his face as he leaned against the back of the counter, his back towards his two customers. The two of them were silent, leaving a rather uncomfortable atmosphere in the air. Making Mr. Uzu chuckle nervously. Is there something on my face, miss? He left the question hanging on the end. It was the crimson and star-eyed lady who spoke up. It's nothing, we just thought that you were someone else for a second. And it's Makoto. Makoto Ustusuki. She then pointed to the woman next to her, who was still staring at Mr. Uzu. And this is my friend, Hamura Ustusuki. She said with a bit of uncertainty at the friend word. You two sisters. Something like that, she quipped. She was obviously not in the talking mood, nor was her partner apparently. He refrained from using the player pin to scan their minds. He had already invaded the privacy of one person already, and he didn't feel like doing the same to two other people, at least not today. You two ordering for here or to go? To go, was the curt reply from Hamura, the woman with the freaky eyes that seemed to be holding back a lot of power. Makoto then ordered for the two of them, seeing as Hamura wasn't going to say anything. Just the regular Whirlpool special. Apparently Makoto had heard great things about it from their daughter, and then the two left just as swiftly as they came. Hey idiot, you do realize they left without paying, right? Floey, I am many things. But I am not stupid enough to ask a goddess, much less two, to pay up for something that they can just conjure up. That's just rude and suicidal when one of the goddesses is. Aren't you just glad that that meatbag with milk whoppers told you pretty much everything? Mr. Uzu whipped around to face the potted plant that sat in his window. Floey the flower was more of a partner and acquaintance than a friend. He could look all cheerful and nice 1 second, and become the most evil and cold-hearted monster the second. But damn if he wasn't good at being an informant and gathering information. Really, the only reason he stuck around Mr. Uzu and his fellow employees was because interesting stuff happened around them. Then again, maybe the small shred of compassion that the monster had gained from encountering the most evil and fear-inspiring being ever had something to play into it. You mean from the fact that Naruto's mother is the head of this world's pantheon of gods, that she had 3 wives, and that all of her children are gods that embody different aspects of the world in their true forms. From the god that cursed Zerf, to the one that gave magic to all humans in place of chakra. Yep. Although wouldn't that Kushina bitch be your mother too, considering your special condition? Floey said with a lowered brow and a cheeky grin. I refuse to see how a megalomaniac can be my mother. Besides, Aren't you a god yourself with those 6 human souls you have under your belt? The plant shrugged as it basked in the sunlight. Meh. I got god-like power, but really, being a reality warper doesn't make me a god. Give me the souls of 1 million monsters and 7 more human souls, and then I would be a god. And you would be dead. As would be everyone else. Mr. Uzu blinked at Flowey's admission. 1 million? That seems a bit much, doesn't it? Hey, I'm not the one who made the rules. And it can't be weak monsters either. It has to be something like Rojang. Rojang. I forgot that idiots like you that have actual jobs and don't just look at a fellow destruction lover getting the shit kicked out of them. Do I even want to know? Flowey's smile suddenly became very monstrous and evil as he leered at Mr. Uzu. You'll see when Naruto gets back, and he better have that hairy idiot's soul when he gets back. Mr. Uzu simply fixed the evil flower with a look before he shrugged. Whatever, Flowey, I'm going to bed and closing up shop. It's been a slow day and I don't think anyone else is going to stop by. If you want your water, it's over by the counter. That seemed to make Flowey happy. Yeah nigga, give me dat drank. He singed out. Mr. Uzu only looked back with a stare before he went upstairs to sleep. From dawn till dusk Naruto fought against Rojang, a monster that he named upon seeing the prowess of the behemoth. It was a brutal fight that ruined the valley that Rojang called its hunting ground. Of course, at the end of it, both combatants, monster and mage, were both too tired to actually finish off the job. So they came to a mutual agreement to fight another day. Rojang was surprisingly an intelligent monster, capable of somewhat complex thought, but couldn't communicate it. Its vocal cords were built through years of evolution to be used to install fear, announce its presence, and roar out challenges. Naruto simply dragged himself out of the valley through the night, and made his way towards the nearest town with a train station. All without sleep. Nothing a few healing spells couldn't fix, it just wasn't healthy. Despite what people think, using magic to get rid of fatigue and healing is not a good idea. Because it simply takes it away and doesn't get the body used to the feelings of tiredness and pain. So upon arriving at a nondescript town that he really couldn't bother learning the name of, Naruto walked the cobblestone roads to the train station, and was about to try and sleep in his compartment when he took stock of the person that was sitting across from him. Why hello there, my little Naru-chan. Came the mirthful voice of Kushina Uzumaki. Sitting cross-legged, with 2 crimson blonde twins by her sides. She had changed since he last saw her. But not in any way he had expected. Naruto stared at her. Not one sound made it out of his mouth as he stared at her. Or more specifically, the Rinnegan eyes on her open palms, the horns that were jutting out of her head, the floral pattern eyes that had taken the place of her violet ones, and the crimson, ringed, and tomo patterned eye on her forehead. Her clothing was incredibly different from what he remembered as well. She wore a transitional high-collared princess kimono that was adorned with intricate gold and purple lines with tomo running down the center and edges of the gown. Her crimson hair had changed. It now had silver intermingled into the ethereal silk-like strands of dead skin cells. Let's have a little talk, son. But first, say hello to your little sisters like a good boy, would you? The only thing that Naruto did was glare at his mother while suddenly closing his right eye, and keeping it sealed as orange light shined beneath the fleshy folds. That seemed to please Kushina as she smiled at him. Not the loving smile she flashed him like when she impaled him with her hand, but a happy smile. Like a dog she personally trained just did a proper trick on her command. Good. You know your betters in this situation. It fills me with a sense of pride to know that the child I helped raise is good-mannered. A growl almost escaped his throat as he suddenly covered up his left eye with his hand. A snarl formed on his lips, but never made itself manifest. What do you want, mother? He spat it out with venom. There was a particularly toxic dosage when he said, "Mother." Kushina frowned, then glowered at her son. The twins at her sides tensed as they looked fearfully at their mother. Is that any way to address the woman who birthed you into the world after so long since I last saw you? She questioned with a cold, steely voice. And like that, the entire temperature of the room dropped and a suffocating aura replaced the air in the compartment. Naruto fell out of his seat, unable to stand up too, much less sit in the compartment underneath the crushing pressure that his goddess of a mother was permuting. He began to gasp for air and struggled to breath. Say it, she hissed at him. Beg for forgiveness, you petulant child. Naruto tried to struggle to his knees underneath the overwhelming pressure. And slowly he did. He glared into his mother's eyes. He gasped out, I will never beg anything from you, he choked out while never breaking eye contact with the goddess before him. Kushina laughed at him, a laugh of amusement. So defiant, just like your father when I was bisected him. She stated while Naruto fell back down to the ground. The twins to her sides looked at the eldest child of Kushina with pity for being on the receiving end of their mother's hair-trigger temper. But I guess that's part of what made me love you when you were a child. I do so hate it when people immediately LTY bow to me. It gets so stale after a while. So to see someone openly defy me, especially my own flesh and blood, it makes me proud. And like that the pressure ceased. Naruto crawled back to his knees and puked out his guts, earning looks of pure disgust from the three females present. Kushina then snapped her fingers, her third eye glowed, and the entire train compartment changed. Naruto suddenly found himself sitting in an incredibly comfy chair that was the color of gold, while sitting across from him were his mother and sisters. But the entire compartment had changed entirely. Gone was the train compartment with just legroom and a window. There were now in a giant room that was plated gold. The chairs and couch that the room's occupants were sitting on were in top of a rug with the Uzumaki swirl taking up a majority of the center. And in between Naruto and his other family members, was a glass coffee table, with the handle parts seemingly made out of diamond. Now then, I believe that we have some things to talk about. Like how you escaped from the Voidlands when I was trying for hundreds of years to pull you out of it. Kushina spoke with authority as she folded her hands, and crisscrossed her legs. And like that, she had Naruto's full attention. Cat, a graffiti artist that branched out into numerous media. From videos, to street art, to clothing design, and etc. Known, loved, and famous to all, Cat was a massive hit with its live life to its fullest appeal. But Cat was anonymous. There was no real face to Cat. There was just the stuff that Cat did, and that was all people could pin to Cat. As such, people didn't know that Cat was in actuality a group of people that got together to do their thing. Mr. Uzu, the base cover. Nara Shikamaru, the planner. Uchiha Sasuke, the advertiser. Kiba Inuzuka, the supplier. Neji Hyuga, the drawer. Naruto Uzumaki, the inspiration. Flowey, the eyes and ears. And finally, Kiba's cat, the unofficial mascot that isn't really publicly known but is rather the source of the name. These 7-8 people make up Cat. And their unofficial meeting place, unofficial because they didn't tell anyone about it, was the coffee shop known as 36, read as 36 and not 36. These 6 humans and one plant gathered together because of one thing. They could all see the UG, which stood for the underground. It was the reality where the Reaper's game took place. It was a place for the dead to fight for their lives, literally. The Reaper's game was a 7-day event where recently dead souls would give up the thing they consider to be the most precious, partner up, and try to survive the 7-day onslaught. Those that failed to be partnered up had their souls erased by the noise, and ceased to exist. Noise, the means by which Reapers would eliminate players. Noise was essentially soul frequency waves given form. There are multiple kinds of noise. Red, which would attack you if you didn't have a partner. Yellow, which is created, encourages, and feeds from the negativity that surrounds people. Blue, which is incredibly powerful noise that acts the same as red noise. And finally, taboo noise, which attacks anything that is human and not noise. It is a type of noise that is illegal to be made among the Reapers, and the penalty is erasure should anyone create it. There are also the relatively harmless, -2 examples, pig noises which are green in color. Those kinds don't actively seek anything. They just exist. Each day, a mission would be issued out by the game master, the Reaper in charge of that specific game. They were the ones that surviving players would have to fight should they reach the end of the 7-day event. Should the game master be erased, one player will be resurrected, and time will rewind by 1 week, the day the person died. But should even one of the missions be failed before the time limit, all the participating players would be erased. CAT was more than just a simple artist group. CAT was a group that did what they could to help out the players that were in the Reaper's game. Through observation and experimentation with captured noise, they were able to invent a decal that, when drawn on a building, would allow players to become visible in that specific establishment. Things like pins and clothes act differently in the UG in comparison to the RG, the real ground where the living existed. Pins would grant people certain abilities of their psi frequency matched to that of the pin, and different clothing would grant buffs in vitality, durability, or offensive power. And considering noise dropped money and other pins, well, suffice to say, the player survival rate increased exponentially. Of course, when this happened, the Reapers tried to remove the decals. But they found that they couldn't. In the end, the composer, the one in charge of everything, decided that they should be kept. No one raised any complaint. You don't go against a decision made by the composer, not unless you wanted to die. Apparently, the reasoning was that it made the game more interesting, leading the members of CAT to deduce that the composer only saw the game as a source of amusement. This in turn led to CAT's second goal, hijacking the game and disassembling it. They of course made sure that none of the Reapers found out about that little tidbit, considering that the Reapers actually enjoyed their RG-UG life. As such, CAT's base of operations was based in Crocus, the place where the composer was known to appear the most. That isn't to say that Crocus was the only place where the Reaper's game took place. In fact, there are multiple locations where the Reaper's game happens. It just happens that Crocus is the place most often used, with Magnolia coming in as a close second. Each member of CAT acted independently, spreading their influence any way they could. It just happened that the graffiti artist sticked is what the crowd ate up, and it became their main thing. And so the live life to its fullest, without regrets outlook that CAT adopted became its message to the world. However, each Sunday morning, every member of CAT met up at the 36 coffee shop to discuss anything relevant to their plans. And one such meeting was taking place right now. Mr. Uzu sat down on his couch, nibbling on a toasted bagel, in the part of his coffee shop that he liked to call the relaxation area, that just happens to be very much like a cafe. In a somewhat circle sat every member of CAT, minus Uzumaki. Sitting on the same couch as him, petting a bobcat that was in his lap, was the delivery man, Kiba Inazuka, a cat lover and resident hater of all things dog. On a couch across from the two of them were the members of 777. Sasuke Uchiha, the advertiser, sat relaxed, leaning back with his feet up on a cushion stand as he had his trademark smirk on his face, a cup of coffee in the hand that wasn't leaning on the armrest. Shikamaru Nara, the strategist, took up the rest of the brown couch, lying down while leaning on the other end's armrest, tuning his magic guitar with a bored expression on his face. By the window of their little area hidden behind a bookshelf was Floey the flower, the eyes and ears, as he sunbathed in his pot, a cruel and evil smile on his face as he giggled about something. Neji Hyuga, the drawer, sat by the same window on an incredibly comfy chair, drawing a picture with his blue pen. A calm smile on his face as blood leaked from his nose. Mr. Uzu then cleared his throat, but didn't stand up, signifying that the meeting was about to start. Everyone present stopped what they were doing, to a degree, and looked up to the ringleader of their little gathering. Gentlemen, I have some rather interesting information to share with you all. It's a game changer, boys, and it came from Aiko of all people. He surmised with a grin, his shades glinting in light of his proclamation. Shikamaru sighed as he sank into the couch even more. This is going to be something incredibly troublesome that will make me have to rethink all of our contingency plans, isn't it? Well, he did say it was a game changer, you idiot. I like to think that means at least something will change from all this monotony. Or is that too complex for your feeble human to comprehend? Spoke the resident evil flower in a snide tone. Neji frowned at the flower. Floey, we don't need that kind of attitude here. Just go back to sunbathing. He spoke calmly. Of course, the flower just looked at the Hyuga with a raised eyebrow and a blank face. Fine. I already know what you morons are going to discuss, so I'll just go back to doing what I like to do, he responded with a glare. Sucking the world dry, piped in Sasuke. Devouring the souls of innocents, added Kiba. Finished Shikamaru. Floey's smile turned demonic as his eyes became black beady dots. Maybe I won't spare all of you when I obtain god status. Mr. Uzu waved him off. You love us too much to do that. Kill us? Nope. But hold our souls hostage? A definite yes. He jibbed with a smile. He did enjoy these meetings. Then again, the bickering was normally everyone against Floey. Floey flashed his signature monster smile. Just get this over with so that I can be in peace. I have some idiots I need to track down later. And like that, all the attention was focused back on Mr. Uzu. Leaning back into his couch, a smirk graced his features as he pulled a donut from his equip space. Tell me, guys, what do you know about Fiores, and by extension the whole world's pantheon of gods, or rather goddesses? Each goddess is one of my daughters. And each and every one of them is bound to an aspect, or element of the mortal world, embodying that trait in their true guise. The world has been this way since I reclaimed by full power, and gained even more. Kushina spoke as she drank from a cup of tea. Naruto stared at her with a neutral expression. His left ankle was lying on his knee, the way a man crossed his legs. His right eye was glowing a bright orange color as orange wisps floated upwards from it. Behind him floated three monstrous skulls that were curved, had mandibles, and had a void in place of their eye sockets, with orange eyes. These were his Gaster blasters, and they were poised to strike at a moment's notice. He passed a glance to the twins that sat at his mother's side. They both wore matching dresses that hugged their bodies. Both were in the color of white, and had 9 magatama around the neck area, circling it. Their fingers were manicured a deep shade of red. And their eyes were purple and ringed, with tomo swirling and circling on the rings. And just like Kushina, they were barefoot. Kushina took one look at his bored expression and snapped her manicured and claw-like fingers. The door of the ridiculously large train compartment opened and in walked 2 maids wearing red and white kitsune masks. They were balancing trays of tea on their palms as one walked over to Naruto and kneeled down beside him, offering him a cup of steaming tea. A maid performed the same for Kushina, and the twins. Casting a scrutinizing glare at the tea, he relented and took it from the tray. Their jobs done, the kitsune masked maids took their leave after bowing to the room's occupants. Taking a sip of his tea, he noticed that it tasted the same as the tea that his mother would pour for him when he was still a kid. He sent a raised eyebrow at the woman across from him as she closed her eyes, but not the third eye or the eyes on her palms. He then took a deep breath and thought over his current situation and his feelings to his mother in general. To put it mildly, he was confused. What did she want? Why did she want to ascend to godhood? Why was she seeing him now when if she was a god she could have visited him any time she wanted? What did she mean she tried for hundreds of years to pull him out of the voidlands? Just how did she get so many damn children? Did she even love him like she claimed when he was dying in a pool of his own blood? Did he even love her after his birthday bash? Should he even care? Did he even miss her like that aching feeling in his chest told him, or did he just long for the woman she used to be? Shaking these thoughts from his head, he cleared his mind and set him priorities. Right now he needed information. First he needed to know how she found him, and if she always knew where he was. He needed to know what her plans were for him, because that's the only thing that could have caused her to pay a personal visit to him. And lastly, he needed to know how he could wiggle himself out of this mess he unknowing walked into. Before he could say anything, she spoke up. I have only seen those used against me by one other being. Did you hope that you could intimidate me just by simply showing me those weapons? If so, you are a pathetic fool who doesn't know his own place. She told him without even looking at him, only examining her nails. Naruto's eye twitched as he gripped his cup with much more force than necessary. Bitch. Are you even my mother? Or has your power gone to your head? Did you learn nothing from when you experienced my presence, child? Put those away before I make you, she commanded with the authority that only a god could command. With a pointed glare directed at Naruto, who glared right back. However, he had no inkling to experience that horrible pressure again, so with a pulse of his magic, the Gaster blasters went back into his own personal pocket void. Kushina smiled at Naruto. A proud smile. Whether it was herself for being able to control Naruto or from Naruto actually learning not to cross her only she knew. Good. You're learning. Allow me to ask a question, my child. What do you know of the other pantheons of gods, and of the outer beings? But as it turns out, there are more than one pantheons. A lot of grumpy old men consider Kushina to be a bit of upstart, but are afraid of calling her out. Kinda funny that gods are in actuality pansies, right? Joked Mr. Uzu as he nibbled on sesame seed bagel. Sasuke simply looked confused at that statement. How the hell do other pantheons exist if this world's only pantheon is Kushina's? You're kinda contradicting yourself there, buddy. He spoke up while drinking from his coffee, having just gotten back from refilling it. He then slouched into the couch, going back into the same position he was in before he left for his refill. Shikamaru gave him a dry look as he pushed his feet away from his spot on the couch. Neji just continued on with his drawing, having one ear open for the information dump. Floey was nowhere to be seen, having left to go hunt down some poor unsuspecting monster or going out of his way to corrupt an innocent child. Sasuke just gave Mr. Uzu a blank look, telling him to explain what he missed out on. But surprisingly it was Kiba that took the spotlight as his cat laid down on his head. It's because Kushina's power revolves around creating and destroying dimensions in reality. That's pretty op, but it has also lets her travel to other worlds, where she has free reign to piss off other gods and make them her bitches. He said with grin. Sasuke raised an eyebrow at that little tidbit of knowledge, taking a sip as he worked his brain for how that could have turned out. And let me guess, those old men she pissed off want revenge, don't they? Bingo, answered Shikamaru as he strummed his guitar. His face then took on a sour expression at the noise. He then went back to tuning his instrument in his search for making his guitar create his desired sound. A sigh drew the attention to Mr. Uzu. We don't know the specifics, but they tricked her into a bet. A bet that involves a certain member of Fairy Tail. And sad to say we don't know what it was that was bet either. Only that it's bad news if she loses the bet she made. He elaborated. He hummed in thought for a second before he continued. But on the bright side, we know what member of Fairy Tail that Kushina bet on. He said with a frown. Why do I get the feeling that I'm about to be told some bad news? Said Sasuke with a pointed look. Neji threw a newspaper at him for his question. With a glare, Sasuke took the newspaper off of his face, and took one good look at the headline of the main article. Son of a bitch. It was her of all people. He asked the gathered members of Cat. Everyone replied with a solemn nod. Sasuke took a resigned sigh. We can only hope that she wins this game. Today's Sunday, right? The day that the players are given the go-to to snipe out the game master. He asked Mr. Uzu across from him. The owner of 36 nodded his head. That was all that Sasuke needed as he tossed the newspaper back behind the couch. When it landed, the headline was laid before the world. Tragedy. The death of Titania Urza. Mr. Uzu then clapped his hands, bringing everyone out of the funk and back into the present. With a smirk he continued on. Now that that's out of the way, I have some more news to share with everyone concerning the reports I've been making on our old home. But before that, is there anything any of you would like to show the rest of us? Neji raised his hand, making everyone present raise eyebrows at him. Kiba picked off his cat from his head and began to pet it, making the adorable little kitten purr. Neji, I swear to whatever gods that exist besides Kushina, if that is another of your woman drawings, I will personally kick your 6 ways to Sunday. The cat lover deadpanned. Neji only smirked at the feral boy while Shikamaru muttered his family's catchphrase. You can try Kiba, but we both know just how much better I am than you in a straight-up fight. And with that, he flipped over his drawing and showcased it to the other members of Cat. The reactions were varied. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow, but committed the well-drawn picture to memory. Kiba glared at the Hyuga, but gave up and exhaled a sigh. Mr. Uzu looked at the picture very closely, like he had recognized it from somewhere. And Sasuke. The guy had 2 Uzis in hand. Guns akimbo. Neji, why the did you draw a picture of my mother? Why did you come after me then? What's the point? But more importantly, how did you find me if you couldn't locate me before? His demands were not unreasonable. In fact, they were something many people probably would have asked if they were in his situation. And it would seem that Kushina was in agreement with him. Whether it was because of possible remorse for her actions, or just that proclaimed love she had for him just before she sent his spirit to the Voidlands, he didn't know. During your battle with the beast you christened Rojang, one of my daughters was in the area, and she oversaw you clash with the powerful monster. His mother replied with a smile. A smile that had been on her face ever since he stopped trying to deny her, and be a snarky little fellow. Not that anyone could blame him for being a little rude to the woman who had sent him to an equivalent of hell, but she seemed to pride herself on keeping order around her. This was a woman that demanded respect. And like all mothers, she expected it the most from her own child. And I must say, she continued, to know that you impressed one of your younger siblings with nothing but your battle prowess alone, has given me something to take pride in. Knowing that I have a child that, although mortal, can fight on equal grounds with a monster that can make even gods draw blood. Naruto gave his mother a frosty look, to which she didn't respond to at all, unlike his previous glares and scrutinizing gazes, petty remarks and jabs. All that she did in response this time was smile at him. A smile filled with pride and love. Nothing like the smile she gave him when he first realized he was sitting in the same train compartment as the mother that killed all of his friends at his 6th birthday party. Even the twins, who had yet to say anything, smiled at him. With the very same smile as their mother. She probably raised them on the Uzumaki principles like me, hypocritical bitch. The very first lesson you told me was never to turn your back on family, those that do have revoked for right to be treated as an equal for doing so. So what does that make you? He seethed in his mind. Kushina's smile only widened after he finished his thought. It would seem that you're learning that it is better not to belittle someone with your words. Some things are better left unsaid. I never got around to teaching you that lesson, was I? Although I am happy that it seems that you have already learned it. I take it back. My mother's not a bitch, she's the alpha bitch. Kushina folded her hands into her lap as she watched her son take a sip of the tea that her servants had brought for them. Who knew that those progfox noise could be so useful? With a smile, she continued on with speaking. The reason I have come after you, well, can't a mother check in on her own child? Even if he has moved out of the nest and is living with the rest of his flock. She spoke. And in return, Naruto snorted. It was not because of what she said, no, it was the delivery. She spoke as if she was speaking to a lesser being, like she was addressing an ant simply because she was bored. Her chin was held up high as she stared down her son across from her. That was what made Naruto snort. I see that you do not believe me, no matter. That is not the point of this visit. Yes, I admit, I wanted to see you after so much time had passed since I held you in my arms, but I can ill afford to perform an action as thus, when I still have to tell you what you must do, she said with a dry tone, and a hint of longing that made Naruto really question if everything he was seeing his mother do was an act. She acted like this to him, made jabs at him, told him he was a disappointment, and then she would do the complete opposite. She would congratulate him, and tell him that she was proud of him for doing X thing. She would laugh at his expense, and then give him a loving smile that only a mother could give. Quite honestly, it made Naruto want to scream at her to make up her own damn mind about how she was going to treat him. You are a loophole in this bet I foolishly made, Naruto, my son. As a goddess, I cannot involve myself in this gamble I have made even if it was to act as an advice giver. I cannot, in any shape or form, involve myself in this game or else I will lose my place as the supreme goddess of this world. Unlike the other gods, I have humanity's best interests at heart. They are not like me. They view humanity as nothing but playthings to do with as they want. To them, women are nothing but toys to have their way with. Children are not but ants that should stay in line, lest they be stepped on. And regular everyday people are nothing but sacrifices that should feel privileged to be killed in their name. The same applies to them, however. Should they be caught placing the balance of the scales in their favor, they will lose their tittles. And all that belongs to them will be mine. As such, I come to you and ask you one simple thing, go to Fairy Tale. And watch over the mortal form that belongs to one of my daughters. I ask nothing more and nothing less. Naruto stared at Kushina for minutes on end, before he closed his eyes and entered deep thought. I'm sorry, but did you say that my mom's a goddess? The hell is you smoking, and where can I get some? Sasuke said in clear disbelief of what he was just told. And who could blame him? He was just told that his mother, Uchiha Makoto, the woman who has had a cursed record of her incredibly rich husband's dying a week after marrying her, was a goddess. And not only that, according to Neji and Mr. Uzu, she was at the concert 2 days ago, and had actually watched him and the rest of 777 play. What kinda shit were they talking here? He then bonked his twin Uzis together. You still haven't answered my damn question, Hyuga. Why the did you draw a picture of my mother? Neji held up his hands. The picture was ripped to pieces on the rug in between them all as they stared at the standoff between the Uchiha and the Hyuga. A nervous smile was on the blind man's face. Make no mistake, for all of his physical abilities, Neji Hyuga knew that it was not a god idea to be on the receiving end of those Uzis. He had seen just what the Uchiha could do with them enough times to know that simple fact. Troublesome, Shikamaru muttered as he cast a lazy glance at the sweating Neji. He then looked back to the Uchiha, who was now standing up with a burning fury in his eyes. This was the golden rule when it came to the Uchiha: never insult him, mother. I believe that it wasn't your mother per se, chief. I think it was simply another version of your mother that was watching our show up until the halfway point. He responded to the shadow user. If so, then when did she leave? And did she have company? He questioned, putting back his weapons into their hidden holsters around his knees. He then sat back down and got back down into his original reclining seating position. If there was one thing that everyone in Cat knew and respected, it was Shikamaru's ability to explain and win arguments. It was because of him that a lot of the group's problems and tensions were sorted out. Rakan, most likely. I've been noticing a few people around town giving strange looks to me, 36, Mr. Uzu, and the place in general. Noticed two ladies that smelled a shit-ton like dogs as well. Friggin' bitches, reasoned Kiba as he stroked his cat. Neji and everyone else nodded their heads at that sound statement. She said something to her companion that I couldn't overhear over our blaring music, but she did leave when we were almost done playing. Game over. There was something familiar about her partner, but I really couldn't tell you anything else about her other than that because I couldn't get a very good read on either of the two of them. Mr. Uzu then clapped his hands. We'll put that interesting little tidbit onto the back burner in the meantime. We're gonna need more info on that before we draw any conclusions such as motives, end goals, and countermeasures we should prepare. Shikamaru strummed his guitar as he gave out a grunt. That's a load of my back, at least for a little while. Man, why does my job have to be such a drag? The lazy man drawled out. Sasuke simply smirked at his fellow cat member's displeasure. Probably because you're the only one qualified enough to do the smart people things. That and you're the biggest lazy I've ever seen. Chimed in Kiba with a smirk as he snuggled his face up against his cat's. You're also always shirking off of band practice. Added Neji while he reclined back into his couch chair. And you constantly freeload at my place. Chirped Mr. Uzu with a smile and muffin in hand. Meow. The cat meowed. All of you. The guitarist deadpanned with a glare directed at all that were present. Yes, even the cat. To which, they all replied with a silent smirk. Have I ever told any of you how much hate I have that is directed towards all of your existences? No. Well, I hate all of you. He continued with a smirk of his own, while drawing out a string of notes from his guitar that sounded incredibly sad, yet bored at the same time. Chuckling, Mr. Uzu clapped his hands again. Well, now that we have heard Shikamaru's confession of hatred, that burns with 1,000 foreman grills. That burns with 1,000 foreman grills. Yes, I would like to deliver my report concerning the time disbalances and constant restarting that the Reaper's game causes when a player wins the game. The smirk was gone now, and replaced with a stony face. The atmosphere of the room went from lighthearted to uber serious in the span of that sentence. It was business time, and they knew it. Do you think you're still my mother? It was a question that had great significance. A question that mattered greatly to Naruto as he stared straight into his mother's eyes. Her mother's floral patterned, crystalline eyes that glowed with a hue of violet. Did he really consider himself her own child? The bonds of family was not a bond made by blood, but by trust and love. Just because one carried the blood of another, did not make them family. Does a mother love her child? Yes. Does mother sing her child to sleep at night with a lullaby when they were afraid of nightmares? Yes. Does a mother cook a meal and pour her love into the food? Yes. Does a mother comfort her crying child when he was just bullied? Yes. Does a mother murder her husband in cold blood for no reason? No. Does a mother murder the peers and friends of her child? No. Does a mother rip out a core of power that is tied to her child's soul? No. Does a mother bath in the blood and tears of her child? No. Does a mother send the spirit of her very own son, her very own child, to the hellish land of the Voidlands? Hell no. Kushina smiled a loving smile towards her son, who still answered her with a hateful glare. Of course I consider myself your mother. I brought you into this world. I bathed you and cleaned you. I sang you to sleep and soothed your dreams. I fed you and raised you. I taught you lessons and told you the simple truths of the world. I do not consider myself to be your mother. I know that I am your mother. Naruto then closed his eyes, inhaled, exhaled, and then opened them. Staring hard into his mother's eyes with an intensity that caught the goddess slightly off guard. He then folded his arms and crossed his legs. His left eye then caught a flame with the ghostly orange it had before, with wisps of power floating upwards into the air. Answer me this. You could have just ripped the QB out of me, did your whole ascension to godhood bullshit and be done with it. Instead you murder my father, my friends, and you send my spirit off to the Voidlands. I can see you taking out father for a reason, he was a seal master and you didn't want to take any chances. I can care less about being sent to the Voidlands, it was a blessing in disguise as far as I'm concerned. A scowl marred its way onto the only male child of Kushina. But I don't see any reason for why you butchered all of my friends. Sai, Choji, Shino, Ino, Kiba, Sasuke, Neji, Shikamaru, Sakura, Kakashi, Anko, you had nothing to gain from doing so. Every year, during my birthday, I go through each of their names and the memories I have with them. I've been doing that since year 1 through 1000 from the time I was stuck in the Voidlands. To this day I still do so. Tell me this, was that all part of the plan? To kill all of my friends? Both of the twins looked to their mother with confusion in their eyes. It would seem that they were kept out of the loop, so to speak. Kushina's smile changed to a frown at the question. A tilt of the head and a humming came from her throat. It would seem that you do not understand the situation at the time, but to answer your question, I did plan on murdering all of those that claimed to be your friends. I killed the children that were only being used as political chips by their own parents. The orange aura that surrounded Naruto's eye flashed red for but a split second. Did you truly believe that Minato actually cared for you? That our supposed, famous, romance was actually true? That Minato saved me from a Kumo kidnapping? What better way to ensure the loyalty of the village Jinchuriki than to make the demon container love the one who is being groomed to be the next Hokage? The goddess spat out. Naruto simply creased his eyebrows as a curious gaze replaced the look of seething rage that he was directing towards his mother. What better way to create a powerful tool for the village other than combining Uzumaki genetics seeped in Biju Chakra that was originally mine and the secret descendant of the second Hokage Tobimura Senju? But then the masked man came along, he was the game changer. He was what restored my original memories. When he ripped the QB out of me, I remembered my life as a princess in a patriarchal world. It was because of him that my original precious people remembered who they once were as well. Quite honestly, Naruto expected a straight answer with a healthy amount of bitch thrown in. He most certainly did not expect to receive a full-blown rant from his mother who may or not be a schizophrenic. But nonetheless, he still continued to pay attention to the ranting goddess. And your coward of a father, who rather than seal the Biju into himself and sell his soul to the Shinmigami, decided that it would be a bright idea to split the beast in half. Sealing one half of it into himself, instead of into its ex-host, and sealing the other half into his very own son, condemning him to the life of a Jinchuriki, of a weapon. A tool that can be sacrificed at any given moment for the village's whims. And so, the village gets two weapons. A cage-level shinobi with one half the power of the strongest tailed beast, and a child with the other half, to be raised as a weapon. I believe they all expected me to die, and they all probably hoped so as well. Except for 3, that is, but regardless, I had stopped them from handing you over to a man known as Danzo. An image of a bandaged man with one eye and one arm flashed through Naruto's mind in recollection. A grimace formed on Naruto's face as he squinted his eyes. Kushina smiled at her son when she saw him do so. Ah, so you remember. I do quite miss those times of peace and happiness, but regardless I won the court case in terms of you not being raised a weapon like poor little Itachi was. To stay next to the other half of the Kyuubi, I decided that I wouldn't push for divorce, but I made sure that Minato knew I held no love for him. He was quite fine with that agreement. Considering that he had the power of the Kyuubi at his disposal, as well as a son to raise as a weapon. The red and silver-haired woman then took a sip of her tea. A sigh escaping her lips as she continued her spiel. From there on, it was the happy times that you and I remember. For you, it was because you were an innocent child that I put a facade of loving until you told me the oath you took. For me, it was because I could talk once again to the reincarnated forms of those I considered precious. And then I noticed the talk among the clan heads, the talk of using their sons and daughters to get connections to the Yondaime through his son. Naruto looked his mother in the eyes while the twins stared back to him. Are you insinuating that my friends were only a child from every clan, minus the Uchiha, were friends with the child Jinchuriki? As well as a representative of Danzo Shimura, the boy Sai, and a child from the councilwoman, Sakura if I am remembering right. Being the ex-Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi left me with an interest ability, the power to sense negative emotions. And those children were practically drowning in them. She finished with a cruel smile. Fear for failing their parent, greed for wanting whatever perks being connected to the Yondaime would bring, anger for having to put up with you, and in 2 certain cases, hate for being stuck with you. All of those emotions were directed towards you, and you were none the wiser. I was the only one that truly cared for you. If so, muttered Naruto as his eye stopped glowing orange, why did you send me off to the Voidlands? Why did you abandon me? He spoke out softly, a pleading tone in his voice. The twins looked to their mother as well, eyes pleading for an answer. Kushina looked into the eyes of her son with a frown on her ruby lips. I had not planned for that. It would seem that the process of the ascension affected my thinking processes, making me believe that you had to earn the love that I had for you. Naruto's eyes narrowed at his mother dangerously. There was a rage that was reflected behind them that burned with a great intensity. I see, you let your power go to your head. You pathetic deranged woman. Our reports have shown a massive anomaly in the time-space continuum. Mr. Uzu began from his seated position, timelines jumping left and right, stopping and starting, until suddenly, everything ends. He surmised to the gathered cat members. Kiba was the first to speak up. What do you mean everything ends? As in, entire timelines are literally ceasing to exist. Mr. Uzu shook his head. I mean, everything ends. Not just this world or the next. Everything ends if this continues. All of existence will cease to be if this is kept up, he said in a grave tone. The seriousness of the issue had already made its way home. Sasuke grimaced as he took in the information being presented to him, swirling the contents of his still hot cup of coffee. So whatever is causing this, is erasing worlds and dimensions one by one. Or is this something that will just be the end result of the anomaly running wild? Whatever it is, it's erasing world one at a time. Only problem is that if this keeps up, it will cause a chain reaction just from the pure amount of paradoxes that keep piling up. That is what would cause everything to end. Our world is just the final push that will be needed to end it all. It may already be too late to stop it, Mr. Uzu breathed out. Shikamaru narrowed his eyes in thought while strumming his guitar. That is, unless we can get the drop on it right. Neji smirked at Shikamaru. Ever the smart one, right? Shika. The blind drummer then turned to Mr. Uzu. Are we directly in its path, or are we just after a pit stop? The Hyuga asked. If my calculations are correct, and they always are, then there will be one stop just before Earthland. A place all of you Sans Shika should be very familiar with, me included. Mr. Uzu said with a light smile. Kiba's and the rest of 777 members, Sans Shika, eyes widened. You mean to say that the stop before Earthland is Edalus? The cat lover asked. Mr. Uzu nodded his head in confirmation. We're going to have to drop everything we're doing to prepare for when whatever arrives in Edalus. That means that you're going to have to drop your Zerf research, Sasuke. Shika, I'm going to give you every bit of info I got on this thing. You know what to do. The red-haired coffee shop owner then turned to Neji. Neji, I'm going to need you to figure out a way for our bodies to generate magic in a non-Iterano environment. I don't need to stress the urgency of this, do I? Neji smirked and gave a thumbs up just as Mr. Uzu's phone began to ring. The man ignored the phone in favor of turning to Kiba. Keep your eyes and ears out on those weird people going about. We need to get more info on these unknowns. Got it. You can count on me, buddy. We've known each other since we were kids, been to hell and back and all that. Of course I'll have blackmail material by the time of 1 o'clock tomorrow. The cat lover responded with a feral smirk and handwave just as Mr. Uzu pulled out his phone. Flipping it open, he had to smirk at the news that was just informed to him via text message. Guess what, boys? Urza Scarlet is coming back to life. He said with a smile. Everyone present smirked at the news. Sasuke spoke up. So that means we got a week head start on preparing for the anomaly, right? At that admission, Shikamaru, Neji, and Kiba paled. Shit, Shikamaru muttered, that means time is about to reset by 1 week, isn't it? Well, look on the bright side of things, Neji chuckled out, causing both Shikamaru and Kiba to turn their heads to him. And what would this bright side be? Questioned Kiba with a glare, to which Neji simply smirked in return. It means that because Urza won this month's game, that a powerful Reaper has been erased. The blind man explained. Huh, kinda makes the vertigo and shit worth it, Kiba responded. Mr. Uzu then clapped his hands, drawing the attention to him. He then gave everyone present a salute. Gentlemen, let us be off. I think we can consider today to be a victory for us, even though we didn't really do anything. We'll meet in 2 days' time. Until then, continue on and carry out your orders. Dismissed. I'll take this job. I'll look after my half-sister, even if she isn't aware that she has you of all people for a mother. But do not think that this will change anything. 6 years of happiness and love is nothing compared to 1,000 years of pain and fear. The last thing he saw before time reset itself by 1 week was his mother's face, as well as his sister's. His mother's face looked content, as if she was happy about the proceedings, while his sisters looked sad, while at the same time angry with him for the things he told their mother. He honestly could care less. And with that last memory of them in mind, he awakened from the sensation of vertigo and pain. Waking up in his bed, with a strange golden bracelet around his wrist made of chains. He knew what it was a binding contract. To signify that he had made a deal. He only uttered one sentence before he went back to sleep. My mother is a freaking schizophrenic bitch of woman. And then he was out like a light. Naruto Uzumaki sat in his train cart. A week had passed since the reset. A week had passed since Urza Scarlet had come back to life from the Tower of Heaven event. It was a new day, and due to the time reset caused by the Reapers, yet another dimensional distortion had been created. That was something that most people were unaware of, but Cat wasn't. The blonde-haired mage was sitting in his train compartment asleep, his face the very visage of calm as his mode of transportation carried him to the town of Magnolia. He had a mission to complete in that town, watch over Urza Scarlet, the Titania. And although he didn't want anything to do with the one who gave him his job, his mother, it was either ignore her and let the world fall to chaos, or actually give a damn and possibly change the outcome of things. Didn't mean he wouldn't do it with clenching teeth and drag his feet through the mud all the way. It was just the way he was. But right now, he was sleeping. Perfectly content, and completely at peace. Nothing could wake him and take him away from his blissful. You drool in your sleep. His eyes snapped open. His right iris exploded into orange as two Gaster blasters appeared from the void and aligned themselves to the sides of his person, jaws open and magic completely charged to fire at the woman at the other end of the compartment. And then the Cat member realized who his unexpected guest was, and his eyes softened. The orange glow of his right eye died down as his Gaster blasters vanished from the plane of existence they were on and returned to the void. Hello Veronica. It's a pleasure to see you again. He spoke with a genuine smile as he crossed his legs and relaxed into his seat. He took the headphones off of his head and settled them down around his neck as he stared into the woman's crimson and slitted eyes. Veronica Ulver was the very picture of beauty. A paragon of what a woman should look like. From the red and white Victorian dress that came down to her stocking-covered, high-heeled feet, to the golden French braided hair that laid over her shoulder, to the prim and proper seating stance that she sat in as she stared into Naruto's eyes. Around her neck was a silver necklace that had a blood-red crimson ruby impeded into a golden cross. And around her left finger was a ring band made entirely of sapphire, the same shade as Naruto's eyes. Her skin was a pale shade that only served to enhance her ethereal beauty, and her ruby crimson lips made her something desired by all, but touched by none, save one. Just remember, hell hath no wrath like a woman scorned. And this woman embodied that idea. This was a woman that could install the fear of all things primal into Naruto, but at the same time she was a woman that he respected above all, save a few. Naruto smiled to her as he held out his hand to the woman. It's nice to see you again, milady. A few years give or take, what's the occasion? The ethereal woman shook his hand as she returned his smile with a blank face devoid of emotion. I seek to hire your services. I have a request that I want you to fulfill. It is time you returned the favor you owe me. Naruto schooled his features as he entered business mode. His face became blank, his eyes hardened and lost that cheerful glimmer. So what will it be? A hit? A hostage situation? Do you want me to extort someone? Or is that someone was stupid enough to piss you off? With a snap of her fingers, Veronica summoned a small stack of papers. She handed them to Naruto and she pursed her lips. Naruto raised his eyebrow as he read through the papers. Quite the track record this fellow has, a serial murderer with a penchant for necrophilia. I also note that he has exclusively been targeting your folks. Seems like this guy pushed all of your buttons as well. If you're going to me of all people, you must want him dead. A scowl marred the woman's face as she clicked her fingers together. This hunter has been targeting the people of my courts. It is one thing to kill some insignificant nobles, but when you target those that directly share my blood, then you will have your death wish granted. Naruto turned to the last page of the packet and narrowed his eyes. This guy's an idiot. Making an open declaration and taking one of your house's family hostage. Guy's a loon, that's for sure. Though that does make me wonder, this is old news as far as I can tell. Why haven't you already made a move? A sad light entered Veronica's eyes as she tilted her head downward. We already know that my baby sister is already dead, the family tree told us so a day ago. A minute before we were ready to begin our assault on the scoundrel who did this. The blonde at the other end of the compartment let his eyes drop a bit as he looked at the slightly shaking form of the powerful woman across from him. He felt the need to hold the woman in an embrace, but refrained from doing so. Veronica was a woman that took the pity from no one. Not even family. She was just like that. Well, most of her family was like that. How soon do you want this guy dead? With Cat's resources at my fingertips, I can find this guy quicker than a flash. He said with a grim smile. Veronica raised her head and stared into Naruto's eyes. Tears that were threatening to fall out were just barely visible. I don't want him dead, I want him to become my personal toy. I want to hear him scream from what I will do to him, that's why I've come to you. You always manage to deliver, and I want this man alive, kneeling in tears and agony at my feet. Begging for release, to want nothing more than to be released from the confines of mortality, but I will not let him rest. She said with a commanding tone that was characteristic of her noble lineage. Naruto held out his hand to seal the deal. Mess with any member of Cat and you would have the rest of them on your. Mess with an employer and you would wind up missing the next day. Mess with a personally respected and frequent employer, well, when Cat is asked to do one of its more shady jobs, they really live up to their boogeyman reputation. Veronica sent him one of her rare small smiles that sent shivers both up and down his spine as she reached out to shake his hand with hers. And like that, Naruto Uzumaki had accepted a job from the only SSS rank vampire in the entire world, Veronica Ulver of House Vlad. Q Ost. YouTube. Character choices. Naruto walked out of the train with his back slung over his shoulder with a smile on his face. The cobblestone tiles clattered beneath his metal-plated black leather boots as people passed by him. With a sigh, he began to walk out of the Magnolia train station. Exiting the station, he began to walk the well-tiled brick road of Magnolia. Colorful houses and two-story buildings of red, yellow, light blue, dark blue, green, and multiple tiles. The town's Riverwalk was a tourist attraction that ran through the entire town of Magnolia that was shaped like a cross, and intersected underneath the large Gothic cathedral in the center of the town, Kartha Cathedral. Naruto walked past a three-story brick building with 6 windows that was in between 2 other two-story buildings, their walls practically touching each other. He absently noted that there was someone fighting another person on top of the building. He ignored them, it wasn't any of his business. The Riverwalk had a small wall to prevent people falling in. Said wall happened to be a small hedge of flowers of different colors that was lined up along the entirety of the Riverwalk. As he ran his hand through the roses and bluebonnets, he saw that across from the river a beastman was turned to stone by brown-haired woman with a rather impressive bust that she wasn't afraid to flaunt. He noted that Fairy Tail had gotten a much better guildhall in comparison to the old one. He then remembered that they had rebuilt the place after Phantom Lord had taken a sledgehammer to the place. Although that begs the question, why was the courtyard so empty? It was a pretty nice place as well. Did it have something to do with all the scuffles he passed by, or all the destruction that was caused by said scuffles? As he walked into the guildhall, an incredibly spacious space with a wood flooring, a stage, a bar, a second floor with pool tables, and many regular tables on the first floor, he noted that there were a few stone statues of scantily clad women on the stage. And then he recognized that the stone statues were actual people in fairy tale. Marajan Strauss, Biska Mulan, Levi Magarden, Lucy Hartfilia, the rumors surrounding that girl were outrageous, Juvia Lockhart, and an elf lady. Didn't know fairy tale had one. And then his eyes noticed the down form of an old man on the ground with a man he recognized as Gajil the Iron Dragonslayer crouching down next to said old man trying to bring him back to consciousness. Shit. Makarov. Naruto cursed as he moved down right next to the incapacitated old man.